Okay, hello YouTube. This is going to be part one of a two-parter on how to build an ultrasonic sound device. This device is going to emit an ultrasonic frequency that is inaudible to humans, but is audible to pests. This device can be used to deter animals such as mice, vermin, deer, boar, birds. They say insects, but I can't speak to that. And in my specific case, and I imagine a lot of people's specific case, is a barking dog. My neighbor has a barking dog problem, so I'm going to build this for him. Part one is going to be on the bench. It's going to be a proof of concept, testing, and basic wiring on the bench. In part one, I'm not going to build and complete the actual device itself. I'm just going to break down the components and how to wire them. I'm going to show two configurations. So I'm going to go through the components now. The first thing you'll need is a 12-volt power supply. So I want this device to be corded, so we have the plug on one end, okay, and then the brick, which is going to turn the AC current from the outlet into DC. This is 12 volts DC, 5 amps. You can buy these online or wherever. These are readily available. These are like 10 bucks. So you'll need a 12-volt power supply. It's going to come with a plug that you plug in normally to your computer or the device that you're powering. But you're going to cut the end off, and you just want 2 wires. Okay, the second thing you will need, I'm going to call it chemo. But this is a chemo model number M048N. This is a German component, and this is the ultrasonic sound generator. This is the component that's going to produce the ultrasonic sound that's going to be sent to the speakers. The next thing you will need is at least one piezo tweeter speaker. Don't mind the glue. I'm going to use 2. Don't mind the glue. I'll show you how to use 1 and 2 speakers. I believe they say this can handle up to 5. The next thing you'll need, 20 gauge wire. You will need wire strippers. You will need a micro flathead and Phillips. Some handy things to have, but you don't need them, are some wire nuts, some electrical tape, and a multimeter. It's good to have. Okay, and the last component I'll show you is an adjustable delay timer switch. This component will be for the second configuration that I will show you, which will give you the most stealth setup. Part 2 will be building the actual device and putting it in an enclosure. You will use the same tools and parts when you build it, with the addition of a soldering iron, solder, flux, a hot glue gun, and a box cutter. Okay, now for the first configuration, which is the simplest. Okay, this is the first configuration. I forgot to mention earplugs while you're doing this, or shove some toilet paper in your ear. And I also forgot to mention I have a surge protector power strip here for working on the bench. So that's what this is. Okay, so it starts with the power supply. And just to show you, for all intents and purposes, I'm going to plug this in, and I'll show you that we're getting 12.4 volts from this power supply. 12.4 volts DC. Okay, red is positive, black is negative. Okay, really simple. Here's the breakdown of the chemo. To power the chemo, you need 12 to 15 volts DC. There's a positive and a negative lead. The outputs, you have, for the piezo speakers, 2 outs for the piezo speakers. So the first thing we need to do is connect the power supply to the chemo. So super straightforward. Positive to positive and negative to negative. For this demonstration, I'm just going to twist them together. So positive from the power supply to the positive on the chemo. And then the negative from the power supply to the negative on the chemo. Okay, now we need to hook up a speaker. So the speaker has 2 tabs and holes. So for this, for just mocking it up, I'm just going to put a hook in the wires, stick them through the holes, and just put a little bend in them. That'll work. Okay, now you're done. If you want just one speaker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to power it on, and you'll hear what it sounds like. Okay, so I'm going to set it to 1. The chemo goes from 1 to 10. Now, some of these chemos have a thumb dial, a knob that you actually turn with your fingers. This one did not come with a knob. This one has a slot for a little micro flathead to turn from 1 to 10. So I'm going to start with it on 1. Everyone should be able to hear 1. Here's what it sounds like on 1. Turn down your volume. Okay, so it's working. This is number 1. I had a friend that said they couldn't hear it at 5. That's 5. Now, I'm using an iPhone, so the phone may have lost it at 5. I'm going to go to 6. It may have lost it at 6, but I can hear it. Now, I lose it in person, and sorry if I'm yelling. I lose it at 7. I can't hear it. But I had another friend say they could they could still hear it at 7.5. So take that for what you will. Now, I'm going to go to 10, so this is completely silent. No one should be able to hear this. And now I'm going to turn it off. Okay, now I'll explain the one caveat to this chemo. So I have it set on 10, which is ultrasonic. But when I turn this on again, the chemo will still emit an audible sound as it powers up. So I'm going to turn it on, you're going to hear it go whoop, and then it's going to become silent at 10. So in this configuration, without the delay switch, you will hear this power up no matter what setting you have it on. So this is not technically stealth. So it's on 10. I'm going to power it up again, and you'll hear it start up before it goes ultrasonic. So turn down your volume again. Here it goes. So there you go. You heard the startup noise. And now it's on, but it's running at ultrasonic frequency. So it's silent. So this setup is fine if you are deterring things in nature, like the birds or the mice or deer, because no one's going to get mad at you. But if you're using this for a neighbor's pet, such as a cat or a barking dog, then you will want the stealth setup, because it will start silently and then it will run silently. And no one's going to get mad at you because they won't know. So I'm going to turn this off. Okay, one thing I forgot to show you is it's on 10 right now. So I'm going to turn it on again. You're going to hear it fire up. And then I'm going to turn the dial back to 3 so that you can hear that it is working. So turn your speakers down again. Here's power. So it fired up and it went ultrasonic. It's at 10, so I'm going to turn this down to 3. Okay, so just another demonstration. So I'm turning it off again. Okay, so that's configuration 1. I'm going to call it 1A. So 1B would be multiple piezo speakers wired in parallel. So I'm going to show you that now. All right, this is configuration, I'm going to call it 1B. This is the Noisey startup, but with 2 speakers wired in parallel. Very easy. This is how you would do it. So your power to the chemo stays the same, positive to positive, negative to negative, from the power supply. Now, you have 2 leads coming out of the chemo. They're not labeled on here, but I'm going to call one positive and one negative. So I'm going to call the right one positive, and I'm going to call the left one negative. So I'm going to mark them in my mind. Each speaker is labeled positive and negative. So I'm going to start with the positives. I'm going to take one lead that I've cut and stripped, and I'm going to hook it on the positive of one speaker. Again, you would solder these for the final build, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm going to take a second lead that's stripped. I'm going to put it in the positive of the second speaker. So on each speaker, I have a lead coming off the positives. Positive with a lead. Positive with a lead. So then these 2 leads now, I'm going to combine with what I'm calling the positive on the chemo. So I'm going to twist them up, and for this demo I'm going to throw on a wire nut. Okay, super easy. So now I'm on the negative, so I'm going to take a black lead that's stripped. I'm going to put it on the negative of the first speaker. And I'm going to put a second lead, black, on the negative of the second speaker. So I have a negative and a negative, one from each speaker. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to tie them into the what I'm calling the negative on the chemo. I'm going to put another wire nut. So now these speakers are wired in parallel. Check both speakers. So here you go. Startup noise. Then it goes silent. Now I'm going to turn it down to 3. Okay, now I'm going to lift each one up one at a time. And kind of point it right at my face. And put it back down. That one's working. And that one's working. Alright, I'm going to shut it off. Okay, so that was configuration 1A and 1B. Okay, on to the stealth configuration, configuration 2. This is the stealth configuration. In this setup, we're gonna add a timer delay switch. This is the one I have. Okay, I'm not going to go over what every, place to connect a wire means in all the acronyms. I'm just going to show you step by step how to wire this into the circuit. You're going to get power through the power supply. You're going to power up the chemo, and then it's going to hit this switch. And this switch is going to wait. It's going to block the signal to the speakers. So this is going to allow us to bypass the startup noise of the chemo. So with this setup, it will power the system will power on silently, and then it will run silently. So when you power up this setup, you should never hear a noise. And so this works in my friend's case because he has a barking dog at his neighbor's place. And so he wants to be able to power this on and no one will know about it. Okay, this is how to wire it up. So the chemo needs 12 volts DC. The switch also needs 12 volts DC. So from the power supply, we're going to take the positive and we're going to connect it to the positive on the chemo, and then we're going to connect it to VCC. So how I'm going to do that, I'm going to take a lead, red. These are like little gates, connectors. So what I do is I just take the end of the screwdriver and flatten the end. And I'm putting a lead. And to screw this down, you need the Phillips, the micro Phillips. So I'm just attaching a lead to VCC. Now I'm going to wire nut this lead from VCC to the power supply positive and the chemo positive. These 3 wires are going to go together. I will also put up a picture of the steps, step-by-steps written out on how to wire this. So I'm going to take a wire nut and wire them together. Okay, same thing for the negative now. So I'm going to take a black lead, stripped at both ends, flatten one of the ends, and I'm going to GND on the timer delay. Now, GND from the timer delay connected to negative on the power supply and negative on chemo. These three get connected. Put a wire nut. Okay, now you have 12 volt power coming from the power supply, and you're powering the chemo, and you're also powering the timer delay. Okay, next step. I'm going to go from chemo output 1, just pick 1, and we're going to connect that to timer delay COM. It's on the other side of the board now. COM. C as in Charlie. O as in Oscar. M as in Mike. So I'm going to twist these together. Chemo output 1. Timer delay COM. I did that in red. Okay, next. I'm still in red. We're going to go from timer delay NO. N as in November and O as in Oscar. We're going to go from timer delay NO to piezo speaker positive. Okay, last step. We're in black now. We're going to go from chemo output 2. This is the last wire on the chemo that you have available. We're going to go from chemo output 2 to piezo speaker negative. Okay, we're done with the wiring. With the addition of this timer delay in the circuit, we have bypassed the startup noise of the chemo. So when I turn this on, it's going to power up silently. And since it's on 10, it's going to continue to run silently. And to show you that it is emitting a sound, I will turn it back down to 3. So turn your speakers down. I'm going to turn it on now. Okay, so it turned on silently and everything has power, so it is running. So I'm going to turn it down to 3. So you can hear that it's working. So quickly again, I will turn it off. I'm going to turn this back up to 10. So it is working, you can tell. I'll tell you how what you'll see on the timer delay. Once you give it power, you'll get a red power light. And then once the switch flips to let the signal pass through to the speakers, you'll hear a click and you'll get a green light. That's how you know the switch has closed the circuit and the signal has passed through to the speakers. So I'll just show you that once again. I'll talk through it as it's happening. So power on now. So you'll get red power light and then the green light, and then you'll see the chemo light up. That's how you know it's on. Okay, one more thing to talk about on this timer delay. All right, here's the second timer that I have. Now, you can see here a small, it looks like brass, flathead screw. This is a small, you don't need to know it, but it's a small potentiometer that will allow you to adjust the time of the delay from 0 to 10 seconds. I'll demonstrate that now. So on this one that I have wired up, I already have the length of time that I want. What I'm going to do is adjust this screw so that the timer delay is short enough to where you will actually again hear the startup noise from the chemo. So I'm going to turn it counterclockwise about 30 half turns. Okay, powering on. Okay, so you can see that the timer delay was so short that you could still hear the startup noise. So if that happens on yours when you put this part in, you need to increase the delay time by turning this small brass screw clockwise. So right now this is set about 0 seconds. There's no delay. So I'm going to set it back to the proper delay time. Powering on. So that's fine for me. We'll just check that it's working. So I'm going down to 3, so watch your ears. All right, it's working, so I'm going to turn it off. Okay, that's configuration, I'm going to call it 2A. Now with the incorporation of the timer delay. So configuration 2B is going to be 2 speakers in parallel. So after disconnecting the single speaker, you should have 2 loose connections. You should have one lead coming from NO, and you should have one lead coming from what we're calling the negative of the chemo. Okay, so to do these in parallel, we'll start with the negative side first. So I'm going to take a black lead, stripped at both ends, and I'm going to go to the negative of the first piezo speaker and leave that like that. Now I'm going to take a second black lead and I'm going to go to the negative of the second piezo speaker. Super easy. So I have 2 speakers with 1 lead coming off of each one from each of the negatives. I'm going to take those and I'm just going to twist them for this demo. I'm going to twist them with what I'm going to call the negative output of the chemo. Okay, so super easy. Just again, the negative, what we're calling the negative of the chemo output goes to separate leads that go to the negatives of the piezo speakers. Done with the negatives. Okay, so for the positive, we have the red lead coming out of NO on the timer delay. And we're going to take one red lead and go to the positive of the first piezo speaker. And then we're going to take a second red lead and go to the positive of the second piezo speaker. And now we're going to take the single leads from the positives of the speakers and the single lead from NO on the timer delay. And we're going to tie these three together. Okay, done. Now I'm going to turn it on. This is our stealth setup, so I'm going to turn it on. This is set to 10. So you'll get red power on the timer delay. You'll get red power light, then green for the switch. Then you'll get power light on the chemo. You won't hear the chemo start up, and then this should be silent. Then I will turn it down to 3 and check to make sure I'm getting sound out of each of the speakers. So, powering on now. Power light. Green light switch. Power in the chemo. It's silent. I'm turning it down to 3. Okay, so we have sound. So the same thing. I'm going to pick these up one at a time. Now I'm plugging my ear with my hand. You can even put these up to your ear and you can hear it, but make sure you're plugging your ear. Okay, so I'm getting sound out of both of these. I'm going to turn it off. Okay, you've now seen 4 configurations. I probably over-explained, but I'm not good with this stuff. I'm pretty dumb when it comes to this stuff, so just bear with me. In part 2, I'm going to show you how I rig this up in an enclosure. So, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. See you soon.